But welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night if you're in Australia. We usually have a few very brave Australian viewers. Again, thank you for that. From all around the world, this is Marc de Swan-Arons of the Institute for Real Growth, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's session of the Humanizing Growth Series with Rajamannar. And I was going to actually do a little quiz and see if we could pronounce each other's last names and see who tripped up the most. But Raja, I'm going to give you a proper introduction in a minute. But first, where are you and how are you?
Firstly, thank God I'm doing well. My family is doing well. So far, we are safe, and that's a blessing in itself. I'm actually locked down in Cincinnati at home. Which actually isn't that bad at all. I got quite used to it, and it's been very productive time, very wonderful in terms of the kind of things that I have been doing over the last few weeks and months. So it's been a good time, and I'm here in Cincinnati still. And probably once things calm down a little bit on the coronavirus side, then I will start traveling again.
Well, that's very good to hear. And Raja, all this time that we were talking and preparing, I assumed you were somewhere in Westchester. I had no idea that you were in Cincinnati, which is a little contradictory because, of course, Unilever is based here on the East Coast, and Procter & Gamble, your former arch nemesis, is actually in Cincinnati. Let me give you a proper introduction, although you probably don't need a proper introduction. Raja is truly I think in a position currently not filled by anyone else around the world, in the sense that he is leading the two largest marketing organizations, trade organizations, industry organizations, both the World Federation of Advertisers, based in Brussels, with Stefan leading it on a daily basis, and the ANA here in North America, I think the world's largest organization, even though its primary focus is the US, of course. Led by Bob, and you are leading both of those, which is a unique position, but very apt. If I look back at your career, and I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about it, but we share a background, of course, in Unilever. You in what was probably the strongest Unilever business at the time, Hindustan Lever. In one of the source companies, Unilever in the Netherlands, Vandenberg Foods, actually, where the margarine started, half of the business at the time. And you've really made a career where you've combined, I think, marketing and business wholeheartedly. I mean, first through the financial world and Citigroup, and then in healthcare, Humana, which is one of the, I think, most innovative healthcare companies in terms of its solutions. We've always been using them for case studies because they are always pushing the envelope. And then, of course, more recently, they've actually rebranded, right? The organization. What is their new name again now? I'm blanking for a moment.
Actually, there are two companies. Humana is still called Humana. We did the rebranding in terms of the logo design and all. The other company is WellPoint.
That's what
And WellPoint has rebranded itself as Anthem.
Right, Anthem. And then, of course, now Mastercard, where you are really paving the way, both with the graphic redesign that we've all noticed and many other big initiatives where Mastercard is pushing the envelope. So, Raja, that is a proper introduction for a marketer who truly is also business leaders, because you aren't just the global CMO, you actually also lead the healthcare division of Mastercard. So you are, again, bringing together a theme that we're going to be talking about a lot today, which is marketing and business, marketing and growth, not separate, but together in one role. So we're going to talk about many of those aspects of your career. We're going to talk about your new book, which is very exciting. And I hope that you'll allow me to tease some nuggets of what's between the covers into this webinar so people can get a preview. But let me start by recognizing the reality around us. You're sitting in your study, I'm at home, and we can't go to our offices at the moment. The last 6 months are unprecedented in terms of the impact at a personal level, at a business level. When you now look back at the last 6 months, what has been your biggest lesson learned?
Yeah, in fact, there are quite a few lessons, but the biggest one for me is in terms of the significant changes that are actually happening in the society in an irreversible fashion. And I'll tell you what that means.
Mm,
So even when coronavirus, you have got the vaccine and everything else, I think there is a permanent change in the travel industry. It's never going to be the same.
mm,
Remote working is something which has really taken shape pretty solidly, I would say, where a lot of people are actually now saying, do I really need to go to work every day? Why
mm,
can't I work from home? Right? And it's not that productivity is getting reduced or lost. In certain areas, yes, but by and large, it seems to be doing quite well. So
yeah,
in that kind of a scenario, the work culture and the work methods will completely change. I don't think 100% of the people will not go back. It's not going to be back to where it was COVID. There
mm,
is going to be a percentage who will continue to work from home or continue to have a balance between working from home and from office. Third, business travel is going to dramatically alter.
mm,
Now, people have suddenly discovered the joys of Zoom and all these platforms, Microsoft Teams and all. And you can have a real close up personal conversation with your clients and prospects without having got to go all the way there.
mm,
And your productivity is so much more and your costs are so much lesser that you're not missing the personal touch, you're economizing and you're making things more efficient. So I think business travel is going to be completely different. Online purchases, people who have not even tried e-commerce before, they were forced to try this time. And that has completely changed the landscape now. There is a growth rate, which if it went through normal growth rate, we would have said that e-commerce would have reached this level in 2026 or 2027. We already
right.
got it in 2020,
Yeah.
right? That's the kind of significant shifts which are happening. Remote learning, schools and colleges, they're not going to be the same again ever. So the extent of change in the fabric of our whole society and the way people are going to work, people are going to manage their lives, I think it has altered pretty irreversibly. And I did not really expect it to be so significant and so dramatic.
Right, right. Let me ask you a follow-up question on that. If you look at your boardroom conversations, one of the things that came out of the IRG program last year with the 100 CMOs sort of highlighting what had changed in their companies um, was the type of discussions that were being held in the boardroom. A recognition there where perhaps before COVID was part of our world, the two stakeholders that were most represented in the boardroom were the shareholder, obviously, and the customer, most often. And it seems like with the onset of COVID, it suddenly flipped to the other two stakeholders, the colleague, whose safety we were worried about, and the community, where we could play a role. And now, post COVID, in the new reality, we need to find a place for all four, but not two or two. Tell me a little bit about how the conversation, the themes have changed at Mastercard.
See, I think MasterCard has been a little unique, I would say, right? And it's not because of COVID. Actually, if you look at our history, way back when the company went to IPO, there was a recognition that you have to be doing something socially good. And they formed a company called Mastercard Foundation and carved out about 10% of the equity of the company was given to that other company.
Oh,
And that company today is worth about $35 billion. They have got assets worth $35 billion. And they manage that company totally differently from MasterCard. So MasterCard has nothing to do with that company. The only thing we share is the name MasterCard. It's called Mastercard Foundation. It's incorporated in Canada. They have their own CEO, their own board. How they invest, where they invest is entirely up to them. The wisdom behind all this was to say that if you really want to serve the society, do it at arm's length from your company
hmm,
and give them the complete operational freedom to do what they think is right to be done without commercial interest coming in the way.
hmm,
Okay, and it's not also you do it this year, you don't do it this year. Once you have got that level of funding, it can just keep going on. And even as per Canadian rules, I believe about 4% of the assets have to be deployed every single year. That's almost like $1.2 billion is put by Mastercard Foundation into various social activities. And that makes a huge change. That's number one. Now, many companies would have rested, saying that we have done our bit. Now we can sit back and let the foundation do their job.
Yeah.
But the vision of the CEO at Mastercard was amazing. So he said, basically, social good is not something which is adjacent to the business, but it should be a core part of the business.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yes.
Right. So he challenged, for example, when I joined the company, he said, Raja, how do you blend social purpose into what we do? Because I want social good to be a part of our brand, part of our DNA, and part of our brand, of course. So what we did was I came up with a concept called priceless causes. So priceless causes is one of the 4 major pillars that we have, where we do societal good through the core business model that we have. So for example, we had partnered with the World Food Program, which, by the way, today it was delightful to see that they had won the Nobel Peace Prize that was just announced. So we have been their largest corporate partner. So what we have done with them is we said, okay, we will run promotions in Europe across multiple countries. Each time a card member uses their card, for every transaction, we will contribute 1 meal to a poor child in Africa, and equivalent that money would be given to World Food Program to administer and run the whole thing, because we don't know how to run it. Now, this partnership had seen more than 100 million meals contributed, and the way it was done was very, very methodical. And because WFP is a part of United Nations, there was credibility, they had audits and everything, so it was run very, very well, just as an example. Or we partnered with Stand Up to Cancer. So another huge problem. And what you see typically is many of the pharmaceutical companies, they invest in those areas where the market size is big, which means where the cancer incidence is very big, that's where because that's where the commercial opportunity is there for them. But if there are smaller segments which are affected by cancer, which can be deadly, there is nobody putting effort on that. So we said we'll partner with the Stand Up to Cancer Foundation, run promotions in the United States and in some countries like Russia, Canada, etc. And similar, each time you use your Mastercard at a restaurant, we will contribute a small portion of the proceeds to Stand Up to Cancer Foundation, which then deploys it for drug research. And it's delightful to see them having discovered 7 drugs that have been FDA approved so far. Now, this social good is good. What does it do to my business? Whether it is World Food Program or whether it is the Stand Up to Cancer. For example, in Stand Up to Cancer promotions, our share of spend in restaurants goes up. We call it wallet share or share of wallet. Our share of wallet goes up in the restaurants category. It goes up during promotion, and it doesn't stay at the high level after promotion. It comes down a little bit, but it is still higher than pre-promotion levels. And when you do the P&L for this whole, and I think the ROI is that we are actually breaking even and getting a bigger growth. So the entire thing funds by itself. So we're not asking the company saying that, hey, we need more marketing dollars to do these social causes, but we found a self-funding mechanism. Same is true with World Food Program. So one of the biggest things that we have seen is this improves the brand image dramatically. It drives the business quite well in the focused areas. It genuinely does social good, not on a one-off basis, but on a programmatic basis. And finally, your employees feel absolutely thrilled to be working for a company which does social good. So it's a win-win-win all around.
Well, it's funny because when you started talking about the foundation, quite frankly, I was a little worried because I think probably 101 on purpose work is it has to be integrated in everything you do. And then thankfully you talked about how actually all this work is fully integrated. So it's almost a double whammy. Now, so you've started talking about purpose. I want to start with you actually, because so much of the Institute for Real Growth program, which I owe the viewers a minute's introduction on, the Institute for Real Growth runs a program for CMOs and other very senior growth leaders, about 100, 120 a year, where we run through what it takes to drive a multi-stakeholder growth strategy. Not shareholder primacy, but multi-stakeholder growth, knowing that that actually delivers superior results in the long term. And then help these CMOs not only inspire and educate their colleagues, but also apply the learning and best practices from other companies, through peer networking and lots of experts that bring their learning to the table, to then apply that in their own organization and actually try to pivot the strategy to a multi-stakeholder growth strategy, which we call a humanized growth strategy. But it all starts with purpose, and it all starts with the leaders themselves. So you started talking about purpose. If you don't mind, can you tell me, are you clear on your purpose? What is it? When did you get that clarity? And then we'll talk about how it comes to show up at work. But first, tell me a little bit about you and how you found out about your purpose.
See, this is probably one of the toughest questions everyone has to ask themselves as to what is their purpose in life, right? Other than living luxuriously, enjoying and having fun, those are not purpose, right? So the key thing is you need to really understand, what am I here for in this world? In my case, I would say that fairly early on, I was fortunate to have a very good spiritual grounding through my parents. So, we come from very modest middle class background. We did not have, significant wealth or anything of that sort. It was actually a very frugal existence. We didn't have a car at home. We didn't have a refrigerator at home and things like that. And so it was very modest. We were not starved for food, thank God, but it was a very modest existence. Mm-hmm. And I think at that time, my parents had introduced me to certain things, which is like, for example, they would take me to old age home. Wow. Okay, old age home where elderly people are taken care of. They are destitutes. Nobody is taking care of them. And there were volunteers, and there were missionaries from Catholic missionary organizations who would actually take excellent care of them. I'm not Catholic, but we could care. It's about humanity there, right? So I used to go there. And likewise, there used to be orphanages. So every birthday, my parents would actually ask me to go with them and distribute some new clothes or some food or something like that to the children. Who unfortunately did not even know what their birthdays were. I think this sensitized me quite a lot to those situations, which left a profound impact. And you start feeling a little bit of a compassion for other people. So you start looking beyond you. And I think that stuck. But then I would not call that as a purpose. That is more a predisposition to think a little bit more purposefully. Yeah. Now, when I joined my chemical engineering, I thought I knew what my purpose was. I said I have to save the world by way of environment. So I did my chemical engineering, but specialized in environmental engineering, about pollution control and how do you clean the water, clean the air. I was very passionate about it. And when I did my MBA, I specialized in environmental management. And so I thought that I was going to dedicate my life entirely to the environment, and that was my purpose. But what I also realized after that, even as I was going through MBA, is your purpose also probably can evolve. You want to do good, but which exact area you want to do good and how you want to do it also keeps evolving. So I sort of moved all over the place. I said, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that. And I know that's part of your evolution. And the way at this stage for me, I see it is, I have to use every facet of mine, every gift that I have got to make a difference to whoever can benefit from it. So if you look at it from the point of, I feel very, very, attached to animals. So I have become a complete vegan. And I don't impose my stuff on anybody else. My family is only vegetarian. They're not vegans, but I don't insist that they have to do. But I try to sort of gently sensitize people, say that, hey, this is what it is. And I try to help animals in my own way, on the one hand. And on the other hand, I try to bring a lot of cause and purpose into my work, which is where I can actually make the biggest difference because of the scale and the resources that the company has got. So making a difference at scale. So I look at it as a channel where some social good can be done, and I can leverage my, what you call access to those resources. The other thing I feel very passionately about is in terms of the next generation of marketers. So I go and teach at various universities. And like you mentioned, I have just written a book. And I try to mentor some folks, including people who have just made CMOs or who are aspiring to be CMOs. I spend time with them and give my, and if you were to look at the overall scenario, being a little nerdy, I have actually got a small infographic that I have put for myself as to what my purpose in life is. And some of them, they connect me back to what I had right at the very early childhood, whether it is the orphanages or the elderly people, so I have got, so it is not, I would say that I have a simple purpose statement, which is to make myself extremely valuable to wherever I can add value, leveraging any gift, any asset, any access that I have got. And then I have compartmentalized and said, this is how I will do it. So that's what I have approached.
And the nerdy part leads to a dashboard that says, how am I doing?
How doing it, exactly.
Yeah, no, but you know what? What you measure gets done is what many people have said. It's so special. As you were talking, Raja, and thank you for sharing that. A sentence came up in my mind that I heard Oprah Winfrey say this morning. I'm doing a meditation course that she does with Deepak Chopra. She quoted someone, I don't remember who had said that you are most empowered when your personality is aligned with the soul. In other words, you're using the gifts of your personality. You have clear traits and skills, and also, I think, a career position to unleash what the soul is trying to do. And when those are aligned, you are fully empowered. It sounds like you're working on that, and it made me think of what I thought were profound words. In that answer, I want to bring it a little bit closer to home. You actually have talked a little bit about your ability to influence. And you have two roles, I explained that already, the business leader and the marketing leader. And perhaps you don't see them as two separate roles. So I want to probe a little there. Let's first, you're in these huge organizations that mostly are CMO membership organizations, the WFA and the ANA. Tell me a little bit about what you, perhaps in that role and personally, see as the role of the CMO today and in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent question today more than ever, because the CMO role is in an existential crisis. Many companies have started doing away with the role of CMO. These are not some obscure industrial companies. These are hardcore consumer marketing companies, packaged goods companies, right? When you had somebody like Coca-Cola eliminating their CMO, they brought the person back after 2 years of gap, but that's a wake-up call. You got Johnson & Johnson doesn't have a CMO, Hershey's doesn't have CMO, Kraft doesn't have CMO. When you have blue chip marketing companies doing away with the role of CMO, you need to ask why, what is happening here? And in fact, that's one of the very first chapters in my book as well. I think the problem as to why CMO role has been losing its seat at the table, so to speak, if not getting even eliminated, or the role of marketing is being fragmented. So for example, if you go back to Philip Kotler, which I think is the Bible of marketing still, right? They talk 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, promotion. Today, many marketing organizations don't have any of these 4 P's except a little bit of promotion, a little bit of advertising. They just don't manage product because there is somebody else managing it. They don't manage pricing, somebody else does it. Distribution, they're not involved at all. Now, if you take away all the 4 P's of marketing and have just an apology of 1 P, so to speak, the question is, we have to ask why.
Yeah.
My answer to that essentially is because marketers have not kept pace with the environment that is developing around us. So for example, when you look at technology and data, when they have been evolving rapidly, marketers are more the creative folks, or have come up from the creative side of the house. They never bothered to take charge of data or control, so much so that the technology folks overtook. And today they are dictating how marketing is done. Yeah. Which is amazing, right? If you look at entire programmatic, ask how many marketers, if they put on their hands on their hearts, understand programmatic. How much do they understand various technologies that are out there? Do they understand AI? Do they understand blockchains? Somebody else is running the agenda for us, and we are meekly trying to catch up now, on one hand. On the other hand, there is also a situation where there is such an intense democratization of marketing that companies, even large ones, are under tremendous pressure to grow. And when that growth is not happening, they look to the marketing guys and say, hey, we are giving you hundreds of millions of dollars. What are we getting in return? Where is the business? And as marketers, again, a lot of people have not learned the commercial aspects of the business.
Mm.
They are comfortable in their zone of marketing and creativity. And when the answers, therefore, they give to CFOs or CEOs is, well, my brand awareness has gone up, my brand predisposition has gone up, my net promoter score has gone up, you've already lost them. They think that you're hiding behind jargon, avoiding their question and deflecting the answer. So with the result of which, you lose your credibility as a CMO, and you lose the credibility for your entire function. So in many cases, they have been demoted to a level below the CEO. They're not even sitting at the CEO table. Right. So that brings up back to what should the role of a CMO be? To me, the role of a CMO, from a delivery point of view, is number one, you have to really build and nurture a brand for the long term. Number two, you have to drive the business and be a force multiplier for your business. Yeah. Number three, you have to be the single biggest competitive advantage for your company, whether it is from insights all the way to retaining consumers and renewing and deepening relationships. It's across the board. I would put these as three pillars of marketing. And in this day and age, they have to be amazing leaders who not only build their teams, evangelize for marketing within the company to get marketing the right stature, they should also make a true difference in the society because they are uniquely capable of doing it. They have access to resources which no other functional or business people can claim. They have the creativity. They can use both parts of their brain, the right brain and the left brain. And they have got the network. They have got the marketing power. If they deploy these, they can make a humongous difference to the society and do social good. So I would say today, a marketer is a full-fledged business manager, a general manager, who is also a deep specialist in marketing, who is socially conscious, making a difference, and giving back. This is what I would say the role of a CMO today is.
Well, that's so interesting. Let me run a premise by you that is really at the core of the Institute for Real Growth program. A little bit of history for the viewers. We were both in that key meeting in Cannes a year and a half ago when I don't think I'm talking out of school. We were supposed to be first thinking about the role of marketing in the future. And we were doing that because outside the building were lots of agency people and we were going to give direction to them. And actually the first half of the meeting became a little bit of a therapy session where people were complaining about their lack of influence, their losing power, the scope of the role being taken away by other disciplines. And we got to the question of, well, how are we going to reverse this? How are we going to take charge again? And in our school of thought, and I think this really aligns very strongly with what you were talking about, not only does the marketer have a gap to close because of some of the things that have happened in the recent past, but actually there's a huge opportunity to take back a leadership role, almost the silver lining of COVID, because now the rest of the organization is open to a humanized growth strategy, actually realizes that that's the only way forward. The only companies that reacted naturally and quick, as you did, when COVID struck, were those where purpose was in the DNA and there were no complicated, can we talk about this or not? Because it wasn't marketing speak or just comms, it was who they were. And the brands that reacted most honestly and quickly were the ones that came out on top. And so now everyone understands we need to be true to this. And everyone's asking themselves, but how do we do that? You, the CMO, to step up and actually take more of a leadership role. Do you sign on for that?
Oh yeah, absolutely, without a question. I think this is really the time where CMOs have to take charge. They have to step up, they have to be bold, and they have to reverse the path. right? And they don't have to do it alone. You see, the beauty of what we have done last year and a half back in Cannes, the meeting that you're referring to, was basically when we all came together as the CMO community and started exchanging what problems are each one of us facing and how do we really help each other as a community. Because this is not just a one company problem caused by one individual. This is prevalent across the industry. So when the industry comes together, when we all get together, we can make a difference. We can support each other. We can understand what somebody else is doing. Why I'm doing something which is working for me, and I share it with other people. So the craft of marketing, which has been really, giving us our livelihoods, so to speak, and the joy of professional success, I think we owe it back to the craft. We owe it to our colleagues. We owe it to the next generation of marketers. One of the interesting things, Marc, is when ANA has done some survey amongst the students who are doing their MBA.
Yes.
Marketing doesn't feature anywhere in their list of top choices.
Yeah.
Many of the students in universities actually still feel that marketing is a con game.
Yeah.
They think marketing is all about hoodwinking people. That's appalling to see that.
Yeah.
So we have to really come together if we have to, and lift this function back up. When I graduated from my MBA at that time, marketing was a top choice. The best of the students would go to marketing, and you would gravitate to companies like Unilever, which is what I did at that time. But today, it's not. The best students want to go to and entrepreneurship. They want to go to Silicon Valley. They want to join consulting firms, or they want to join investment bank.
Yeah, or become a teacher. In England, that is actually higher, significantly higher now. Marketing, I think, hovers around the same level as a real estate broker.
In fact, it is below nursing. Right? If you look at the whole thing. So that's what ANA's study has. That's an eye-opener. We had to bring the glamour, glory. It's less about glamour, but the gravitas of marketing back. Right. That's absolutely critical. We have to bring it back.
So let's talk about how you do that. It's funny, as you started to talk about that, a ray of sun came through your window and enlightened you. So someone's agreeing with you.
The sun himself.
Yes. So let me push it right back at you. You are the head of the two largest organizations in the world, in the marketing field, the WFA and the ANA. Talk a little bit about, and not everybody can do the IRG program. Talk a little bit about what these organizations are offering CMOs, but also the next levels down in terms of understanding this and building the capabilities that are needed for success.
Yeah. So, to set the record right, I'm the president of WFA, but I'm only on the executive committee and the board of ANA. So Marc Pritchard actually leads the ANA. So I just want to make sure. In both these cases, the objectives are very, very aligned. And they're focusing on different aspects, but there are also a lot of commonalities. And that's the reason why it makes sense for me to, straddle both the boards and, and really to make a difference. So to start with the WFA, the fundamental approach is to say that, our mission is to say that, how do we help marketers do better marketing? How do you help them with resources? How do you help them with the frameworks? How do you help them with templates? How do you help them with playbooks in different areas? How do you train them? It is something which is been deeply appreciated, and they have got membership around the world. It's extremely well, taken advantage of in a good way by marketers around the world. Yeah. Not only marketers, but what also WFA is, it's like an apex body. It's an association of associations as well. So all the ad clubs in the world, they are members of WFA. Hence, it is World Federation of Advertisers. Now, I do have some little bit of a concern about the use advertisers because that's such a historical term. It's more about marketers in a holistic sense. Yes. But the equity of the brand is so strong, we didn't want to change the name for the sake of it. The other thing which WFA also does is to take industry issues and act on behalf of the entire industry, on behalf of all the marketers, and tackle those issues. So, for example, there is a coalition that has been formed, led by WFA, called GARM, Global Alliance for Responsible Media. So in this, what we are saying is that as marketers, we are the ones who are funding all the social platforms. And if social platforms are not taking enough controls for societal safety, for brand safety, how do you hold them accountable? As an individual brand, if you have the good intention, you still don't have the power to influence. But collectively, as a marketing industry, we are the ones who are funding the entire social media platform ecosystem. So we should therefore hold them accountable. So we formed this group. All the big brands, all the small brands, they're all there, part of it. The agencies are there. The ad tech companies are there. And the social media platforms themselves are there. And we started breaking it down into pieces and saying, okay, let's define what is harmful content. Let's make sure that the social media companies would agree to be audited by third parties. Mm-hmm. There'll be standards of reporting and so on and so forth. So this is one kind of a thing. Yeah. When I look at ANA is another dynamically thought-leading company, right? Organization. And one of the key things that they have done is in this scenario to say that, look, if there is an existential crisis for the CMOs, one of the biggest areas is because marketing is not being seen as a growth driver. So an entire initiative has been formed, therefore, which is the CMO Growth Council. And that has got multiple pillars saying that what drives growth and how do we excel at this? Like, for example, I co-chair one of the 4 pillars within ANA on this aspect, which is the technology and data pillar. So how do we, so things like how can we put a playbook together, training programs together, recommendations or at least resources together for marketers to be able to just tap into. So today, for example, as a marketer, if you ask them, okay, what are you thinking about augmented reality? The answer is, well, I probably know what augmented reality is at best. I'm not thinking anything beyond that. No, if you don't do it, some technology case somewhere will take away your agenda and you'll become sort of, again, same situation of catching up. So the key thing is we are trying to put together these playbooks as just one example. Or data. What should your technology stack for data look like? What kind of analytics stuff is there? What kind of companies are there? How should your contracts look like? All these things we are putting together, which will be such a huge resource for marketers that they don't have to reinvent the wheel and they can take advantage of the expertise of their colleagues and of other experts out there. So this is how we are trying to drive both at ANA and as well as WFA. And the momentum has been fantastic, Marc.
I'm listening to this, and on the one hand, I'm very, I'm in admiration of all the programs that are being put together, and in a way, the IRG is such a program. Exactly. That's why we collaborate. But on the other hand, I'm listening to you thinking, all right, so CMOs have lost this business credibility, you said, so because they're not commercial enough, and because probably they were distracted by the bells and whistles of digital. And actually what we're saying to them is, but you need to know all these other things. Oh, and you need to move back towards the business role of thinking with your sales partner and your CFO and your CEO. And it feels like this person that's having to stretch like a ballerina to an impossible position. So how do you, as a marketer, how do you balance where to put your focus?
See, I would say that today's marketer has to be like Leonardo da Vinci. You cannot just,
yes.
right? You have to be. There is no choice, right? The key thing is if you are a marketing specialist, you will reach your glass ceiling pretty quickly. You have to be a general manager. You need to understand technology. You need to understand data. You need to understand your business. You need to understand public relations. You need to understand marketing, of course. And marketing also, you should not just be a contemporary marketer or a classical marketer, but you should be a comprehensive marketer, or as I call it, a quantum marketer, right? The key thing is you have to be totally a general manager, well-rounded. You have to use the right brain and the left brain. It's very, very critical. And in order to do this, my strong suggestion will be for people, number one, seek rotations, job rotations and experiences outside of marketing. When you come back into marketing, you'll be a much superior marketer because now you understand the world from other side. And therefore you start talking the language that they can appreciate and understand, or understand and appreciate. Number two, educate yourself. Now I spend religiously 5 hours every weekend. I block the time off on my calendar, and my wife and kids know they cannot disturb me during those 5 hours. I will focus only on learning.
Yeah.
I am doing a course. I have done a Coursera course on artificial intelligence to learn myself, to educate myself. Most of these courses, by the way, are free unless you look for some certificate or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Amazing resources, right? So
Yeah.
I identify a topic and I want to read up on it. I want to educate myself, or I actually reach out to people and say, I know you're a subject matter expert at this. Can you please teach me? And will you be able to give me 2-3 hours?
I think you really look, not to blow smoke in your direction, but of course we talked in the earlier rounds on our article, the global brand CMO, which is the Da Vinci Growth CMO, where we, as the Institute for Real Growth with Spencer Stewart, did the research on the experiences and the attitudes of overperforming CMOs, global study. And indeed, this Da Vinci profile came out where it is about the left side and the right side. It's about the science, it's about the creativity, but it's also, and so many people forget that, about the heart, the humanistic side.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, that people are writing questions at the same time, and it's interesting because one post by Joanna Seton is very interesting. She said, how do you explain the fact that some of these companies that got rid of the CMO role are now reinstating them? Did they, A, find out that it was too painful and they really were lacking a voice in the room? Or B, did the CMO in that organization change or portray themselves, focus differently to re-earn that position? What's your analysis of that?
See, my analysis is companies do feel the absence of a CMO. Companies do feel the absence of a CMO or a centralized body who would control everything and coordinate everything around marketing, because at the end of the day, marketing programs are there. However, when they are bringing, in some cases, when they are bringing somebody as a CMO, they are bringing non-marketing people as the CMOs. So marketing has not gained the gravitas and the credibility to be sitting at the C-suite on a continuous basis in these kind of companies.
Right.
But there are other companies, like for example, if you look at Unilever, I'll just give a simple example, or you look at Kimberly-Clark, they have actually elevated the CMO role even beyond, and they said now it's Chief Digital and Marketing Officer. Okay, whereas digital, because it was more residing in the technology sphere. So some companies are progressing quite nicely. Unilever, for example, is fantastic. Like Keith Weed was a CMO. Now Connie Brahms, who is his successor, she's the Chief Digital and Marketing Officer. That's brilliant, right? And it's happening, but these are more exceptions. My biggest worry is the fragmentation of marketing and being spread out across the board, and the elimination of either a classical or a hardcore marketer and replaced by somebody who has never run marketing before and made him or her as the CMO sitting on top of marketers. Because marketing is not a function that you can run with common sense. There is intuition, there is judgment, there is experience, there is wisdom.
I was going to build on that. What we see so often, and particularly in the IRG program, we have CMOs from traditional companies like Bayer and GSK and Unilever, and we have CMOs from new world companies like DoorDash. And I was talking to the CMO of Poshmark yesterday, and Dropbox, and they're all in the program comparing notes. And without naming individuals, what's very clear is that there's been this swing. At least this is my interpretation. I think we were probably known as the spenders with too little understanding of the effectiveness of that spend 20 years ago. Then digital came along with all its bells and whistles and the ability to measure everything, perhaps not even the things we need to measure. And marketers with their chip on the shoulder of always being the ones that were vague, perhaps overkilled, and went down the data analytics route. And there's several organizations now where they're trying to reintegrate the creativity back in, because you can't optimize yourself to a great idea or to innovation for that matter. But the scary part, and I think that's what you're highlighting, is that in those 20 years, a new generation of marketers stepped up. And what they saw was that this is the way to do things. And they totally didn't see what you learned at Unilever and what you practiced in your other organizations, the business leader. Now you're the CEO of one of the main businesses of Mastercard. When you look around you as a CEO and you look at the peers and you look at how marketing interacts with the other disciplines, I want to highlight one because it was raised in the question: organizational culture. I mean, it starts there, right? What do they say? Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Breakfast. Yep.
What's the role of a marketer in driving culture?
It's immensely important, right? In fact, I'll just tell you about a couple of interesting things.
Please.
So at Mastercard, we are fortunate that the CEO of the company was actually a marketer. He was my boss. He was the head of marketing at Citibank, but I used to report to him. And he was from Nestle's and from KFC and so on. So he understands, he gets marketing, and one of those marketers who transitioned to a very successful CEO. Yeah. So he and I have been actually having this conversation, and what we said is that, look, if you have to change the culture of the company, you need to make people understand the value of marketing. They don't understand the value of marketing if you simply try to teach them or preach to them. They have to experience marketing. So he has now mandated that any general manager, before he or she hits the C-suite, have to have a rotation through marketing. It's going to change a culture profoundly about being a marketing sensitive, marketing centric, or a consumer centric, human centric kind of a company on the one hand. Number two, when we are evolving, things like the purpose of the company, the ethics that you have to practice, these can be seen by many hard-nosed finance folks and CEOs as fluffy and as something which is relatively, oh yeah, it's good for a political correct statement that you're going to make, or write in your annual report, oh, our ESG report is glowing, etc. But for the rest of the year, don't do anything about it. So it's not in the culture of the company. Marketers can play a huge role in this by building that momentum, starting with the CEO of the company, with the C-suite, and down the chain of the command of the entire organization, to perpetuate the importance of purpose, importance of ethics, importance of causes, etc. This is one part of it. The other one is today, fortunately, particularly amongst the millennials and the next generation, you find that they are less selfish than the generations before them. Yes. They are more outward focused. They are more, I would say, idealistic in a very good way. They are more purpose driven. They are willing to take cut in their pay. Almost 60% of millennials said they are willing to take a cut in their pay to be able to work for a company that is purpose driven in a genuine, authentic way, not just in a facade. And when you have got these kind of facts that are out there, you want to create a narrative around it. You need to really knit together a powerful narrative to sensitize people at the C-suite. So a marketing person should be an evangelist for these kind of things. You need to understand, you need to knit the story, you need to tell the story convincingly to your peers, get their emotional buy-in, get them signed up, and then start percolating it. Because these kind of initiatives are very top driven on the one hand. The other thing, when you look at innovation, no, marketing is all about creativity and out-of-the-box thinking and innovation, right? Now, marketing should run actually innovation programs and campaigns within the company to get the best ideas. So, for example, I can tell you, there is, we have done last year an innovation challenge at Mastercard.
Right. Growth hacks like organization.
Growth hacks kind of a thing, right? And this is open not just to marketers, but outside of marketing too.
Yeah.
Now, one of the ideas which actually came from the treasurer, from the treasurer's area in the company. You would think that these guys are totally different than what, but it's a brilliant idea. And actually now we have filed for a patent for that, and it's all being developed and so on. So the point I'm trying to make is that marketers have got a crucial role, vital role, to change the culture within the company at various levels on various topics. And at the end of the day, we are the ones who are supposed to understand people better than anybody else, right? And you should understand your colleagues and peers too in the process. They're also people.
This is music to my ears, Raja. It's funny because Keith Weed, when he and I had this conversation a few months back, and the recording is, by the way, on the IRG website for those that are interested. It was a very good conversation. And Keith has been single-minded in saying, own the consumer. It's your ticket to any boardroom. always. And as he and I were talking about this, and subsequently too, especially now that we have COVID, with such a rude awakening, if you like, of our role in the world as companies, as individuals, as colleagues. Um, we've evolved that in the Da Vinci Growth CMO profile to own the stakeholder. Make sure that everyone in the organization understands the key stakeholders. Now, of course, there are people that actually specialize in dealing with those stakeholders. The CFO will always be the one that does investor relations. Ultimately, the head of HR will be the one responsible for the community of colleagues. But that doesn't mean you can't collaborate very closely and build an integrated picture of the multi-stakeholder demands of the organization, worries and needs, but also opportunities. So I so agree with your broadening the perspective. Now, you mentioned the title of your book twice, Quantum. I'd really like you to unpack it a little bit for us and perhaps give us a little bit of a teaser of why you thought it was necessary to devote all the time that you have. Because I know how difficult it is to find the time to write a book. Why you felt this was necessary and what sort of the key messages from your upcoming book are.
Yeah, see, if you look at the world of physics, I'll just connect the dots in a minute. But when you look at the world of physics, physics is a science that tries to explain all the phenomena around you in this physical world. Right, the laws of gravity, the laws of electricity, magnetism, all this, right? And the various laws and the postulates and the theorems of physics held very good for centuries. This is called classical physics, sometimes also called Newtonian physics. However, when science started advancing, and we have been able to look at, for example, through telescopes like Hubble telescope and all, gigantic, vast, gigantic spaces out there in the skies, right? The nebula and galaxies and so on. Or when you go to mini microscopic size spaces, like inside atomic particles, subatomic particles, and so on, classical physics completely failed. When man started developing the capability to increase speed more and more and more and more and more, whether it is for processing, computer processing, or it is actually for even the vehicles that are traveling, what they discovered is as the speed of an object starts going towards the speed of light, tending towards that, all physical laws break down. So to explain this new environment that we are in, a new field of physics was born called quantum physics by Max Planck, which has formed the basis for everything that we do today, including theory of relativity or the nuclear controlled nuclear fusions, or you're talking about anything, right? Quantum computing and so on. Now, when I look at marketing, I see stunning parallels. Marketing was being practiced since God knows how long, from the days of Pompeii, or even before the caveman types in different ways. Mm-hmm. But today, what's happening is the advent of technologies is totally altering consumers' lives in an unbelievable fashion. Smart speakers, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, blockchains, 5G, 3D printing, robotics, connected cars, wearables. It's like a slew of these new technologies are coming at us so rapidly. It's going to change consumers' life very dramatically. Now, the question is marketing ready for that? Now, my own hypothesis clearly is that classical marketing will totally fail. It's already failing today. And marketing, the way we practice it today, will just not work tomorrow. You need a new field of marketing, which I'm calling quantum marketing, just like quantum physics. So quantum marketing is about understanding the new dynamics, understanding the new environment that we are in, the new variables that we have to play with, and be prepared for that. So my book is all about telling, here are the things that are happening in our environment on technology, on sciences, on various aspects that impinge marketing in some way or the other. Yeah. What is the effect going to be on consumers' lives or on organizations' lives? Because you're talking about B2B and B2C as well. And therefore, what should be the marketer's playbook? How should they reimagine, rethink, and re-envision marketing completely? And that is what quantum marketing, this book, is all about.
And so do the aspects of the new role, if you like, the new way to play the role. What would you say are the three biggest changes versus the current role? What is the actual
So,
metamorphosis that we need to see in marketers?
so I'll tell you what changes are and therefore what the roles should change, right?
Yes.
So, for example, I'm saying advertising, as we know, is dead. I've been saying it now for 3-4 years, right? Advertising, as we know, is dead. When you have got 5,000 ads being bombarded at consumers every single day, their span of attention growing less than that of a goldfish at less than 8 seconds,
Yeah.
with the fragmentation of the screens,
There's
and with consumers having an active hatred for advertising because it's an interruption to these experiences. Okay, consumers are putting ad blocks, more than 600 million, growing 30% per year. Why do you want to hold on to that stupid model? It's not going to work in the future. I go into a lot of depth in the book, but I'm just giving the highlight, right? So I'm saying advertising, we need to rethink. How are you going to communicate and connect with the consumers? I'm saying loyalty is dead. Hundreds of billions of dollars are spent every year on loyalty programs. I'm saying that's the stupidest thing that we do as marketers. Why do I say that? More than 75% of people who are married, who make a commitment till death do us apart, or they have signed a legal contract and they're aware of the consequences of found not being loyal in their marriage, of not being faithful to their spouses. 75% are not loyal. Right? If people are not loyal in a situation where they have made a commitment and they have consequences of breaking that commitment, and still anyway they are cheating, are we not stupid as brands to expect people to be loyal to us?
Yeah.
Right? No, these are the kind of very provocative, I know what you call questions I'm posing, and I'm answering them, and I'm giving a framework to reimagine and rethink each and every one of them.
And when is the book out, Raja?
The book is officially going to be released on the 9th of February. I believe the book is being printed as we speak.
How exciting.
And it will be towards the second half of December. For people who pre-order, the book will be shipped from in the second half of December onwards.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah. And, it can be pre-ordered on Amazon, for example. It's already there. It was actually a cheap thrill for me to see my book there on Amazon. I said, this feels cool. So, but on a serious note, this is something which is a labor of love, and it's been a passion project for me. So I feel very grateful I have been able to do it.
Well, and I'm sure many of the viewers will rush out and get it and order it. I want to end. We have 1 minute left, or less than a minute left. I want to end on the personal note that we always end. Raja, you've talked a lot about lessons learned, but if I asked you to lift one out, one thing that actually humbles you and is a guiding light moving forward to all our other viewers, other CMOs, and more junior marketers, what would it be?
For me, I think one of the biggest humbling moments, I would say, is when I have created what I thought was a super brilliant campaign for Citibank. Not just a campaign, but an entire solution, end-to-end in Citibank when I was in Dubai. It was absolutely, there was no way it was going to fail. And once it was launched, it actually not only failed, but we had a lot of controversy and a lot of PR crisis arising out of that.
And we have less than 30 seconds. So what was the lesson learned?
The lesson learned was that don't ever be 100% sure of yourself. Ask people, learn, listen and learn, listen and learn. We undervalue research. Don't undervalue research. Whenever budgets get cut, you throw research out first. Typically, that's what happens. No. Consumer insights, listening to them is very critical, even if you're absolutely sure that you understand consumers. No, you don't. They are dynamic. They are changing every day. Don't be arrogant. Be humble and learn.
Well, I think you have embodied the characteristic that you're describing, and we call in the CMO profile, the Da Vinci CMO profile, called curiosity. If you're spending 5 hours a week learning new things and you're actually in the role that you are now, I think most people would sit on their laurels. Raja, thank you for manifesting that curiosity, that leadership, for the whole marketing community. I want to thank you for taking this time on a Friday morning or evening if you're somewhere else. I want to thank the viewer everywhere for listening in again, asking challenging questions, and being part of the IRG community. Thank you to you all, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you so very much. Much appreciate, Mark. Thank you for having me. And thank you to all the viewers. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Stay safe.